Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing News.
Team Terrence Crawford believes Judas Kavaliauskas knocks out Vergil Ortiz. And look, let's just break it down honestly and objectively as possible. And we start with, boxing insider Bo Mack, the head trainer of Terrence Bud Crawford. He believes that Mean Machine, Judas Kavaliauskas, will beat the crap out of Virgil Ortiz Jr. But that's not all he believes. He even went on record as saying, not only does he think he's going to pick up the victory against Virgil Ortiz, he expects him to do it in style. He even went on to say, and I quote, "Probably stop him. I'm confident as hell in Mean Machine. He's tough." So, he believes that not only is he going to beat the crap out of Virgil Ortiz, he also believes that he's likely going to stop him in the fight. He thinks he's going to knock out Virgil Ortiz and pretty much beat him up through the fight. And, you see Terrence Bud Crawford as well echo these comments. He stated when referring to Virgil Ortiz, he said they're trying to move Virgil Ortiz too fast. He should fight Mean Machine. Now, you've seen Terrence Crawford turn into a promoter anytime he talks about Virgil Ortiz. Anybody else, he's always about to smoke. But with Virgil Ortiz, the guy's a promoter. Oh, he doesn't want to fight me. He needs to fight this guy. If you notice his language. And that's just being objective about Terrence Crawford. His energy is off when speaking about Virgil Ortiz. But the reason why Bo Mack, and also Terrence Bud Crawford thinks so highly of Mean Machine, of Judas Kavaliauskas, is because he dropped and hurt Terrence Bud Crawford in their fight. And so they believe that if he's this tough for Terrence Crawford, he got to be equally as tough for Virgil Ortiz Jr. And that says a lot about their line of thinking, about, power and what comes into play. But, they also doubt Virgil Ortiz's skills and abilities due to his last performance of getting hit more than usual against Maurice Mighty Mo Hooker. You've even seen Terrence Crawford say, he's good, but I saw a lot of holes in his game, after that fight. And at the end of the day, it's fair to assess it, but you also have to look at the fight. Virgil Ortiz still stopped Mighty Mo Hooker. Not only did he still stop him in that fight, the reason why he may have got hit a little more than usual was that he was only 70% or maybe even less for that fight. A lot of people don't know that he had COVID leading up to that fight, couldn't spar for 3 weeks. They didn't know that. And he still stopped this guy. This wasn't the best version of Virgil Ortiz. This was a weakened version who had COVID, couldn't spar for weeks, and right in the middle of camp. But there was also an additional issue a lot of people don't know. According to Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated, that Virgil Ortiz also had a significant arm injury just days before the fight and was having trouble lifting his arm. So this man had all these issues in camp. The fight should have been canceled multiple times over. He went through anyway and still stopped this guy. We did not see the best Virgil Ortiz that night for a myriad of reasons. And the only reason any of this was mentioned, because Maurice Hooker was making excuses after the fight. See, at the end of the day, we know that the Virgil Ortiz we saw wasn't even the best one, and yet he still dominated Maurice Hooker. He still got the knockout win, and they think a weakened version of Virgil Ortiz is a guy who has a lot of holes in his game. They are going to be surprised when he faces Kavaliauskas. And that's not to say that Kavaliauskas isn't a good test for Virgil Ortiz. He's a great test and a measuring stick for Ortiz to see where he's at. This fight will tell us a lot about Virgil Ortiz. It'll tell us more about Ortiz than Mean Machine. But Virgil Ortiz has the potential of a superstar. He's shown flashes of an elite fighter and has shown consistent improvements fight by fight by fight. I think Virgil Ortiz picks Mean Machine apart. Let's be honest about it. All the intangibles side on his favor. The better defense between the two fighters has to go to Virgil Ortiz. The most power out of the two fighters has to go to Virgil Ortiz. The youth out of the two fighters has to go to Virgil Ortiz. And you even see the better trainer out of the two fighters has to go to Virgil Ortiz Jr. Virgil Ortiz is being doubted and overlooked against Mean Machine, but this fight will show just how good he really is. Because men lie, women lie, but the facts don't lie.